What's good, theorists? QB here. There's always talk about who has or hasn't, does or doesn't get their flowers. In this case, we're talking trophies, and then more than a few times the gramophones ended up in the wrong hands, respectfully. A couple of disclaimers before we jump in. This isn't a list of snub nominations. If y'all want to see that video, let us know down in the comments. These are just examples of the Grammy guys and gals fumbling their own nominee choices. We're not in the business of beating dead horses. Spoiler alert, there's no Kendrick on here. And while some of these picks are bigger head scratchers than others, they aren't in sequential order. With that out of the way, don't forget to give this video a like, drop your thoughts down in the comments, and grab out the subscriber button. We got big things popping. Let's get it. Number 10, 2007, Best Rap Album. It goes without saying that we don't subscribe to every conspiracy theory that's floating around on Al Gore's internet, but there isn't any logical explanation we can think of as to why Release Therapy won Best Rap Album over King. It didn't outsell the album, so there goes the popularity angle. The difference in quality between the two is unmistakable. Tip's fourth studio album is still being praised as not just a regional classic, but one of the better albums to come out of the decade, while Release Therapy is much closer to being forgettable than foundational. Even the production and personnel choices would lead you to believe this would have been a runaway decision in Clifford Harris's favor. The album was initially slated to be the official soundtrack for his debut feature film, ATL. Due to the abundance of recorded material, Tip instead released it as a solo studio outing. That wouldn't impact the critical or commercial success of either project though. The album would debut at number 1 after selling north of 500,000 records in its first week, while ATL had a stellar box office opening weekend, coming in third behind Ice Age The Meltdown and Spike's Inside Man, being the only film to return a profit and then some in relation to its budget. We're not saying there was an Illuminati cabal that was responsible for awarding Luda one of his 3 Grammy Awards, just that this particular award should be resting in T.I.'s trophy case. 1998 Best Rap Album. Whether you're watching this video in 2024 or 2044, rest assured Diddy's latest legal battles had nothing to do with his inclusion on this list. Simply put, him winning over Life After Death was a mistake 26 years ago, and it'll be a mistake 26 years from now. While we do want to be on record in acknowledging just how good of an album No Way Out is, we think it was pretty tone deaf to award the Grammy to Diddy when he wasn't even the best part of his own album. In fact, the best part of his album had his own album. Fans of the channel know the love-hate relationship we have with the double disc albums, so when we see a category where not one but 2 double discs could have rightfully won the award, it's mind-boggling to see their hard efforts not be rewarded. Respectfully, we can't speculate on the role Biggie's passing had in terms of posthumously winning the award. Maybe a small part of the voting committee figured Puff would be claiming the award on his behalf regardless, and wanted to ensure that the winner was actually there to claim it. Also worth noting, Biggie was still eligible to be acknowledged with the Grammy certificate just for being a featured artist, but not for a trophy. On the other hand, Puff would have had the trophy waiting on him regardless due to his involvement behind the boards on Life After Death. We know the importance of these awards goes beyond the trivial technical aspects of who walks away with what, but it just speaks to a clear cultural disconnect when examining how we give our legends their flowers versus a committee of listeners who might have spun the record but couldn't connect with it. It's not a hot take to say that Puff as an artist is one of the most monotonous and inflection challenged artists to win this award, is it? Because if we're keeping it a buck, Missy also would have been a better choice to hoist the gramophone by the end of the night. 2015 Best Rap Album. At the time of this recording, Eminem is 11 albums into a discography that spans more than 4 decades. Of those 11, he's been nominated for Best Rap Album 7 times, winning a record 6 of those, meaning every time Shady releases an album, he has a greater than 50-50 shot of winning the award. Putting that in perspective, Hov and Nas have won the award once apiece, the same amount as Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, while second place winner Kanye has won 4 times and Kendrick has grabbed 3 awards himself. Slim is one of the greatest rappers of all time, and while the award would make you think that rapping is all that it takes to satisfy the requirements, you'll find that every other artist with multiple wins did so through a combination of both top-notch rap performances and transcendental artistry. Of the chosen nominees, we would more or less agree with 4 of M's awards, but 2 of them is no way. His 2010 award for Relapse draws flack from us due to the quality, or lack thereof, of the album itself, which is why we would relegate that win to the honorable mention list. While Marshall Mathers LP2 is a significantly better record, it also faced significantly better competition. Long-awaited sequels to an artist's magnum opus usually don't pan out too well. MMLP2 wouldn't be the worst album to fit that description, but it certainly is one of the more formulaic and cautious examples we would throw out there. Meanwhile, we get one of the decade's most explorative and vibrant releases with Childish Gambino's Because the Internet. Or you could go the TDE route with Schoolboy's most authentically gritty project to date on Oxymoron. Even Comm's 10th studio record, Nobody's Smiling, would have had a more grounded and logical logical pathway to the award. If you haven't already, make sure you check out our Eminem album rank to see where Marshall Mathers LP 2 landed in the pantheon of his greatest works. He would also be nominated for Best Rap Performance for Rap God. Now, had they nominated Bad Guy and gave him the award for that, we would be talking about Relapse right now. They also snuck in an Iggy Azalea nomination in for the new classic. Y'all not slick. 2020 Best Rap Album. If you're familiar with Tyler's artistic progression over the 2010s, then you know exactly why this album made our list. Simply put, it's not a rap album. No, Igor is about as pop as Justin Bieber or Katy Perry. Okay, maybe not that pop, but it's about as far from a rap album as you can get. Easily one of his best records to date, Igor brought Tyler's story of vulnerability and transformation full circle, so it deserved to get a lot of love from the awards that night. It was just placed in the worst category to do that. If we're strictly going off the albums that were nominated, this was Meek's award to lose. Not only did he bounce back with his most polished and well-rounded effort, he did it with a commercial impact that couldn't be denied. When Tyler spoke on the bittersweet accomplishment of being typecast in the urban category, he spoke truth to a subject that Black artists are all too familiar with. When you present the powers that be with a reimagined understanding of a collective experience, you force them outside their comfort zone. This message and moment took the music industry by storm. Instead of Oscars So White, the focus shifted to a medium that had always been dismissive and ignorant of the dynamic spectrum of music we've been able to encompass. This isn't us pointing at someone and saying, "You're wrong and you should be ashamed." It's us pointing out the disconnect that happens in real time when art outpaces our imagination. Billie Eilish ended up winning Album of the Year at the 2020 Grammys. Let us know down in the comments if you spun that record, and if you would have given it to a record like Igor instead. While Tyler himself has credited Westside Gunn as a huge inspiration for jumping back in his rap bag on Call Me If You Get Lost, we think the committee also deserves some credit. The album was clearly Tyler demonstrating what real rap sounds like. Shout out to Bunny Hop. 2004 Best New Artist. We would never make the argument that sales are an end-all be-all when examining an artist's talent or potential. We also understand that when making these decisions, neither crystal balls nor hindsight come into play. But Fallen debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 with modest sales of 141K copies moved in its first week, while Get Rich or Die Trying moved over 870K after it was shipped a week early to combat leaks. Can't forget the semi-autobiographical movie of the same name that would hit theaters 2 years later. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Admittedly, Evanescence's debut album would go on to sell more than 17 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling albums of the century. Definitely not an easy feat, but while one artist would find themselves getting a lot of traction in movie soundtracks and grunge rock scenes, the other would churn out anthems that still get played in the clubs, birthdays, and video games more than 20 years later. We've said it before, and trust we'll say it again before the video is done, but this is not an attack on the artists who were awarded these trophies. Quite frankly, it's the Grammys who are doing these acts a disservice. Evanescence hit the scene in a way no one could have predicted when they signed their deal back in January of 2001, but that just further begs the question of how someone can be named the best new artist after having a flash in the pan moment when their competition was being crowned the King of New York before ever dropping his debut. 50 Cent might be as foreign to the Grammy sphere of influence as Evanescence was to ours, but we seriously doubt it. The man got shot more than anyone in human history and lived to tell about it, while securing co-signs from Dr. Dre and Eminem, two of the biggest hip-hop acts on the planet. Over the years, we've heard Bring Me to Life in more venues than we can count, but never knew who the artist was or what the song was called. We're sure there are people all around the world who don't even speak English who would recognize In the Club before 50 Cent's vocals even come on. Chalk it up to 50's uncanny business acumen or the growth in hip-hop versus rock fan bases over the last 30 years, but something about this pick still doesn't add up more than 20 years later. Again, we know these picks are usually educated guesses at best, but comparing the band's second album to The Massacre, you tell us who should have been named Best New Artist. 2012 Best Rap Performance. Are you a fan of rap music or just popular music in general? If you answered yes, we'd be willing to bet money you've at least tried to commit Busta's verse to memory by now. Maybe you've even mastered it like Chico Bean and Coco Jones.
You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come, gotta sit it, then I gotta go, and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow, and then I gotta shut it in a little thing and think that you doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna do it.
We've yet to come across any clips of anybody rapping Otis even half as intently as that. If that's not impact, I don't know what is. Watch the Throne has been immortalized into hip-hop lore at this point. Even the handful of notable collab albums that preceded Jay and Ye joining forces, nothing had even scratched the surface of what they were able to accomplish. With that being said, Busta's verse on Look at Me Now is easily one of the greatest features of all time. From an impactful perspective, the song revitalized his career, opening the door for many living legends to introduce themselves to an audience whose earliest memories of hip-hop involved cranking the Soulja Boy. We'd argue Otis wasn't even the most impressive performance off the album, exemplified by the duo winning the same award the following year for Niggas in Paris.
Why do you think the song Niggas in Paris is called Niggas in Paris? Cause niggas was in Paris.
Possibly the most startling fact of it all, we haven't even touched on Breezy or Weezy's verses. Honestly, Busta's verse alone was more than enough to lock down the award. The category for Best Rap Performance was initially introduced back in 1989, with DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince winning for Parents Just Don't Understand. After 1990, the award was shelved for more than 20 years. We just find it odd that after bringing it back and having one of the easiest answers in the Academy's history, that they chose Otis, especially when they have a whole category for Best Rap Song. Nobody in their right mind could argue that the duo had a more impressive performance than a trio we never knew we needed. Had us looking like, do you know what the criteria is for your own category? 2020 Best Rap Performance. After the untimely demise of Nipsey Hussle back in March of 2019, not just the hip-hop community, but the world at large felt a collective sense of shock and disappointment. He had just dropped Victory Lap and seemed to be entering the precipice of mainstream commercial success. So his nomination and subsequent win didn't necessarily come as a shock to us. But when examining the award he won and the manner in which he won it, we think that the posthumous boost that artists get after they're no longer here to smell their flowers is the only justification the Academy could have given for awarding him the Grammy for Best Rap Performance. A year prior, he found himself nominated for Best Rap Album for Victory Lap, a nomination that was well deserved, by the way. We're not going to break down that year's winner and the process the Academy must have used to get there. Again, no dead horses here. But we do think that his back-to-back nominations are particularly telling of how artists, specifically rappers, can't receive their just due until it's too late. Just like with Look at Me Now, Down Bad clearly stands out of the crowd, showcasing lyrical gymnastic with the likes of Jid, Cole, Boz, Earth Gang, and Young Nudy. From start to finish, the track is a masterclass on lyrical rap that doesn't pass the cringy, I just read the dictionary from cover to cover line. When looking at the rest of the nominees, we see a clear pattern. The Academy essentially broke up Best Rap Song into two categories. Because while these songs might have been smash hits, none of them contain any revolutionary performances. Racks in the Middle would be nominated for Best Rap Song as well, losing out to 21 Savage's A Lot featuring Cole. If you ask us, this is where their wires got crossed. A Lot could have and probably should have won the Best Rap Performance, while Racks in the Middle had a much stronger argument for Best Rap Song. We need to figure out how to get on the voting board, because as happy as we are to see artists like Nipsey and Tyler get their flowers, we hate to put asterisks on those wins because someone miscategorized them. Can't forget to dot those I's and cross those T's, people. 2021 Best Rap Album. I know, it feels blasphemous to take a Grammy away from God's son. Our beef definitely isn't with QB's finest. It's with the voting body that awarded him with the Lifetime Achievement Award that was 15 years overdue. King's Disease was a breath of fresh air that we weren't even sure Nas had in him at this point in his career. Still, we'd be partaking in a collective delusion to argue that in any facet, it's a better album than Alfredo. The thing that has made the Nas hit collaboration so intriguing has been Nas's flexibility in being able to adapt to a new age sound. His whole career, he's dealt with criticism around his ear for production. While Hit Boy is no primo, he's a much better baseline than what we're accustomed to hearing from Nas up to this point. On Frank Lucas, Gibbs stated that due to his subject material, he never sees work garnering critical acclaim. Before the list was announced, we would have been inclined to agree. 2020 was particularly pivotal for the coke rap scene. Following quintessential projects like Daytona and Bandana, we get the emergence of Griselda on a more mainstream level. Since 2020, we think it's safe to say Alchemist has been the clear-cut best producer of the decade, with Alfredo comfortably housing his best material. So as much as it pains us to say, in a year where the Grammys curated their most inclusive and well-balanced nomination pool to date, King's Disease was probably the last album that should have won the award. While the storytelling and delivery we've praised Nas for wasn't as prevalent on his first two King's Disease tapes, he would more than make up for it on Magic and KD3. The duo would rake in 2 more nominations for their successive King's Disease entries, so while we have to give the committee props for even acknowledging a lane in hip-hop we never thought would reach the big stage, we're still skeptical. After all, they went from nominating Gibbs, Royce, and Jay Electronica to Jack Harlow and DJ Khaled in a span of 2 years. We guess old habits really do die hard. 2014 Best R&B Album. Honestly, this one hurts the most. If you knew how heavy the team rocked with Queen Keys, you know she's the last artist we want to be taking accolades away from. Currently, AK and John Legend are tied for the most wins in the category at 3 apiece. But if we're keeping it a buck, John should be up 1 right now. It's not that Girl on Fire is a bad album. Far from it, but Legend was on a different planet when recording Love in the Future. In the grand scheme of the Grammys and their many mishaps, this is as subjective as the list gets. And by that, we mean that Alicia Keys is one of the few artists that could win an award that rightfully should have gone to John Legend, and we wouldn't immediately call for a boycott. As far as the quality difference between the 2 projects, however, it might be one of the biggest snubs on the list. We know the Inferno version of the lead single quite literally torched the summer of 2012, while staples like Fire We Make with Maxwell, When It's All Over, and 101 were undoubtedly first ballot Hall of Fame AK essentials, the album has a much more minimal and acoustic arrangement. This direction is more on brand with Alicia's love for showcasing her vocals and instrumental savvy, but it doesn't hold a candle to the lush and decadent soundscape we hear in Legend exploring on his 5th studio album. We're not even exaggerating when we say the interludes on Love in the Future made our legendary playlist. Honestly, we'd have an easier time believing whoever voted on the nominees just outright didn't listen to the album and selected Legend from his namesake alone. If you've seen our rankings for the respective artists, then you know Girl on Fire finds itself towards the bottom of her body of work, while the exact opposite could be said for Love in the Future. Essentially, our problem with this year's award lies in the notion that a middle-of-the-road AK album is eclipsing peak John Legend output. That would be like giving Paul Pierce the MVP in 2013 over LeBron. I know, crazy, right? This just goes to show that the Grammys and their inconsistencies aren't limited to just hip-hop projects or even the big 4 categories like Album of the Year. 2012 Best New Artist. Winning over the likes of Nicki Minaj, J. Cole, and Skrillex, indie folk band Bon Iver found themselves nominated for 4 Grammys at 2012 award show, winning Best New Artist and Best Alternative Music Album. We don't really have any input for the latter, even at the dawn of their respective careers. Giving it to the band over a rising pop star Nicki Minaj has to be one of the more glaring omissions that we've covered. Technically, the group had released their debut album back in 2007, albeit independently. As far as mass consciousness goes, however, they hadn't hit their stride until working with Kanye on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, the same album where Nicki would deliver a standout verse on Monster. Ironically, this would be a song Bon Iver also found themselves on. While the band had made respectable strides in the alternative scene for the previous 5 years, it paled in comparison to the domination we were seeing from Young Money's First Lady. By 2012, Nicki had already been on a successful mixtape run, released an archetypal hip-hop pop fusion album, and served as 1/3 of the 3-headed monster that was Young Money's trio. Best New Artist might have been an oversimplification, but not winning it is damn near inconceivable. At this point, Cole hadn't fully blossomed into the generational talent that we would appreciate throughout the 2010s, so we can kind of give them a pass on that one. Even though he was still the first artist signed to Roc Nation and had a #1 album under his belt. While we don't want to get caught up in hindsight bias of our own, we seem to remember Skrillex's chokehold on EDM music already being underway by this time. Point being, while them passing over Nicki might not be as outrageous as passing over 50 on paper, we feel the message it sent and the double standards behind it are equally as damaging. Who's to say what awards these artists get up for? Maybe we care more about the validity of the show than they do. But as a community of art enthusiasts, we should have a definitive night where we can come to a consensus about the outlook of the industry. If artists like 50 Cent and Nicki Minaj are losing to Evanescence and Bon Iver, and the BET Awards aren't worth the paper they're printed on, where can us critics go for impartial musical appreciation? Do I smell a CT Award show around the corner? There is. If you made it this far in this video, comment below what is your most memorable award show moment? Prizes, snubs, all-star, or amazing solo performances? Don't forget to hit that like button. Throw some super thanks our way. If you're not subscribed yet, be sure to fix that as we close in on 15K. We out.